we're going to normally look to go into our skydive position. So that's like either feet crossed or grapevines, and we're pushing in our hips, and I've got a wide base. When I drive in my hips, there should be just a little bit of daylight showing between the floor and my knees. I don't want too much weight on my active knees. I want to be driving my hips in this position. And I'm generally either grapevining or crossing the feet. Again, that can sometimes depend on your build. If you're longer, grapevines will make more sense. If you've got shorter limbs and you're trying to grapevine someone who's longer, that's not going to work so well. So crossing off the feet is better from there. Oftentimes, you're going to be switching between the two as your partner tries to get inside position. So yeah, as he separates that way, I might switch grapevines and vice versa. If he frees those, I might cross off. So it's exchanging between those two from there. Right. One of the things that, especially no-gi, switching from a controlling mount to an attacking mount from here is often an issue, because obviously if I just start fitting weight down from here, his arms have been low, exactly, he can straight away start bridging me up into leg entanglements or hip escaping into like a knee and elbow, all of those. Okay, so that's one of the issues, because sometimes in gi, obviously, you can start threatening with the collar that brings his hands up and you bring your knees into that space. But in no gi, he knows that if you can't get your uppercuts, he's just going to bide his time to wait until I start attacking. And then he's getting his hands into position, so he might be on my hips, he might be already having the bar across the hip for a knee and elbow, depending on his preference of escape. So what I need to do is I need to get an attachment to the upper body before I release the pressure from my hips. Okay, because that's what's kind of saving me in this position, is this attachment and pressure down. As soon as I go here, he's gone. So what I want to do is I'm going to fight to get an underhook. If my partner has like this kind of position where the both elbows are in the mat, I can pick the side. If he's gone like a bar across, I'm gonna be forced to go on the short arm side. Okay, so it'll be tough for me to underhook that one. I'm gonna normally go for this one from here. But whichever way we go, I normally like to take their left arm. So I'm gonna bring my body weight away from the underhook I'm trying to fight for. That both allows me to not be kind of likely to be bridged. I mean, it's less likely anyway if I've got good control with the hips, but it's still possible. So bring my weight over here means I'm not going to be too off balance that way without post. And then second, once I've dug in here, I can now drive my body weight back and use it to help push his arm away from his body. So it's not just my arm kind of going this way, I'm kind of driving my body behind it and taking it out to the side. I use zombie fingers to start walking that arm up. I'm trying to get that bicep to his ear. From there now, I'm just going to cup his head a little bit, lift and pass underneath and punch, get behind the elbow. Again, it doesn't need to be a perfect arm triangle type position yet. It's just setting up, getting this control. Now that I've wrapped the head on that side, I've moved my body weight over to here again. So again, I'm not over here where I might get bridged. I'm sunk my body weight a little bit over to this side and I'm controlling. So I'm thinking this is a control position. We can work into the arm triangle and other attacks next, but initially I'm just trying to get this bicep up and my head on this side of the arm. Even if it's not a perfect position, like maybe his arm's up a bit here, I'm just trying to trap it on that side. I start trying to force it in and work it into a better position then afterwards. Alright, so again, we're in our skydive from here. I'm going to pick a side, I start fighting for that underhook, I drive my body behind it, taking it out to the side, and then I start moving it up to the head. It can sometimes be in one motion, or I can like zombie finger it up slowly. I generally find if I've taken it far enough to the side here, I can take it up quite easily. Then we lift the head and I punch underneath. Then the next part to get over this arm, so I want to get my elbow across there, I punch straight and then drop my head behind the elbow, and then I'm kind of where I want to be from here. Okay, so we'll just warm up with that and then we'll fit some specific attacks. 1, 2. Bicep, tucked, pass the arm over, manage to get behind my partner's elbow. Okay, so normally I'm going to, one of the main issues is initially I'm going to be too much on his face from here. So I need to readjust that from there. So normally I can do that with dropping my shoulder back and dropping my weight back a little bit from here and kind of like sliding back and then pushing back underneath this way. It sometimes take a few goes to get into the right position. Another thing I want to make sure is that my elbow is nice and deep, or his neck's deep in the crook of my arm. Because a common mistake with this is if my elbow is further away from my partner than my shoulder. Okay, I kind of ideally want pretty much a straight line running through that shoulder to the elbow to the floor. So I really want to push my partner's head into the crook of that arm. I can drive my arm through a little bit from there if that helps, to try and get this as flush as possible. Because again, that arm is responsible for cutting off that side of the neck. If there's a gap, it's going to be less pressure, right? So I need to try and get that as flush as possible from there. Readjust, get that kind of tight from here. I like to finish with gable grip. There's nothing wrong with figure 4. The method I'm going to show is with gable grip. Like my brother likes finishing with figure 4 there, but he's a very different build to me. So I find this is like uses a minimal amount of arm strength because I've got pretty weak arms. So I go gable grip with the arm in contact with my partner's neck on top of the sandwich this way. One of the other things this allows me to do is I can use this as a wide base, which if I'm figure 4ing, I can't. So I'm more likely to get bridged into guard than if I do. I mean, you can finish it from guard, but it's a bit more of a ball ache. So I prefer going gable grip here. I go wide with it. Now I'm going to try and finish from the mount. So I keep my grapevine on my far side and I drop my hips off at an angle here. I can even flare my leg out a little bit if I want from there. Now, as I'm trying to squeeze, I'm also driving my head over the top. So I kind of bring my chin over the top of his head and I just squeeze from here. Yeah? You should get the tap with pretty low effort if you've done that right. A common mistake in my opinion again is a lot of people do head and arms where they bury their head and they try and pull, like you've built a wall with your head and you pull towards it. And that's very arm centric. I find you can gash your arms out a lot easier that way, or at least I do. Whereas if I'm this way and I'm pushing my head over the top of his, not only am I contracting with my and constricting with my left arm, but I'm also pushing into it with my body and my chest this way. Right? Make sure you're pushing across, not up the mat, because obviously that makes it more likely to bring his arm out of position. From here I'm trying to push it into his neck, so I'm trying to swing my head over the top here and I push in, and it's just nice and steady that way until we get the tap from there. Right? So one more time. We've fought for that underhook, I've driven my body weight, or bring it up, lift the head a bit, I'm behind here. At this point to clear this elbow, I punch across, slip behind, I've got the position. Hold it a little bit, readjust, get that shoulder a little bit lower so that I'm not on his face too much, and push his head into the crook of my arm a bit. Then when I'm ready to go for it, I get that gable grip, open out the elbow, keep the grapevine on the far side, sink my hips, I can drop this leg out a little bit if I want, and I just start pushing over the top there. Straight that side, okay? So have a little play with that one. Off you go, would you?
You ever like to use the option?
Have more escape options and defense options. Kind of from the mount, more or less all he has is trying to turn out a bit and give his back from the arm triangle. That, or trying to get bridge and get his arm circled back to the other side of my head. Okay, bring it up. Okay, so one of the issues though, obviously, when I dismount from this, I can simply try and windscreen wiper across here, but obviously he's got that arm free on that side, so he can sometimes use that to stuff my leg in if he times it right and trap me in half guard. And obviously if he gets below my knee, he can now use that as when back takes territory and shit like that, okay? So that's not good. So you can either try and just do that really nice and sharp and get to that far hip, or you can use like a leg pummel and use the opposite foot as well to come in here and kind of transition off a frog mount type position from here. So you can play around a little bit with that, but trying to make sure that it's as difficult as possible for your partner to catch that leg, because obviously then you're kind of going to be in a losing battle at that point. When we dismount from here, if I do this perfectly, I sink my hips and I start walking around like anti-clockwise on my partner from here as I go. And you get the tap like that with one arm, because I keep walking around, it increases more pressure. The annoying thing is that people will generally, because that for me like exemplifies the ability to apply pressure from side control. Okay, it's not necessarily you're going to sink down here and finish your partner every time, because exactly, he can turn into me. He can walk his hips towards me to alleviate that pressure. So if he stays still, I can walk around and choke him with one arm from there. Great. Generally, you're not fighting like a brick, so he's not going to just lie there. He's going to move around or something like that, especially if he knows that, because obviously if I'm turning that way to increase the pressure, to decrease the pressure, he just needs to move towards me, and there's nothing blocking him from that. So that for me kind of more is like isolating and showing the mechanics of what we're trying to do in a, like an amazing best case scenario. What will often happen from here is I'll use my knee to try and block the hip from here, so he's not able to move towards me too much, so I drag myself around with the other leg, and then I'm going to squeeze from there to get the tap. So I kind of get a bit better of an angle on my partner, but I'm trying to prevent him moving into me too much, okay? because obviously if I'm going from here, the other one is that I just try and keep outpacing my partner, but again you can end up running in a stupid little circle with that shit, which just looks pretty gay. So generally from here, if I block that from this and drag myself out, I can kind of get the best of both worlds from that.
Do you think you could put your foot on his hip?
I mean, maybe. What that risk is kind of off bouncing too much, or potentially him reaching with his other hand and putting me into a half guard and then climbing up his knee and shit like that from there. I don't think necessarily it would be that much better than kind of using this block on here. Again, it's similar to, I'm just using it kind of like this kind of block with my arm, but I'm using my leg. So it's just trying to keep a bit of separation. So the angle I'm making that's increasing some pressure on his neck isn't getting destroyed too much. Okay, it's not obviously as great as if he just physically couldn't move and I could keep going all the way, sort of to the nth degree, but it's going to prevent him from moving hip to hip, which is obviously what I don't want in this position. I don't want him coming hip to hip. I'll try and keep that space from there. So we're going to leg pommel our way across. I said you can go frog mount and come across, or you can just try and get that heel nice and tight to your butt and then straight to the far hip and then dismount that way. There's a few different dismounts. Those two are probably some of the main, most common ones. And the frog mount, if you're having someone who's pretty good at regaining their guard, frog mount is probably the way to go as you're dismounting, because it's much more difficult for your partner to successfully clamp a leg. Because again, you've always got to think about it in that to get a half guard, he needs to be able to pinch his thighs together. So one way of making that really difficult is putting in 2 feet this way, because now this automatic separation, it's very hard for him to clamp on either one of these, and I can use that to kind of pass off and dismount that way from there.
So the motion is in the hips and that?
Yeah, exactly. So it just makes it very hard to clamp, but there's nothing wrong with also just trying to get very good at pulling this straight heel up and tucking it into that one as well from there. But again, it's going to always be a kind of timing based thing to make sure it doesn't run into a good guard restoration, because his arm is free on that side. Okay, so a little bit. 1, 2. The gable grip that I've been doing here, or the figure 4 grip. Okay, both very good grips. The figure 4 tends to fit a bit more crank on your partner's neck. You reach up on top of here. I remember when I was first doing MMA, it was often done to try and smother the person as well. So you reach up, pinch their nose, or smother across that way, just to make their life a little bit more miserable from there. So this is a very valid grip from there. As I said, most of my success with arm triangles is gable grip. That's like the ones I've finished in competition and stuff. One of the other grips that I really like, actually, I think it was not Babalu Sobral, but Babalu Gasparelli, which this was actually many years ago, but I was showing this one. But instead, you lift up the partner a bit and you punch underneath and you go double arms this way, and you use this to choke your partner. And what it does is it increases the height underneath your partner's neck, kind of fits a bit more pressure on the back of the spine when you're driving in. But again, it's unlike the regular figure 4, it's not very like energy hungry. I kind of just clamp here and then I like use it as I rotate round through it. Yeah, so it fits a bit more pressure on the spine and the neck. So this is a grip I quite like as well. So though in my opinion those 3 are kind of the main 3 grips that are worth experimenting with with head and arms. You've got like that one arm version as well, which you can play around a bit with there, but grips that we're connecting, generally those 3 are the main 3 that most times are going to be involved in this. So you've got your palm to palm. Again, like gable grip S grip isn't generally that advisable, because unless the neck's so long that you can't connect it, like this is, you're trying to take away space, right? So you don't necessarily want a longer grip unless they're that big. Okay, so normally gable grip is better to that one. Figure 4 or this double arm wrap.
Is the one arm on just pointless?
No, the one arm's not pointless. The one arm's great. Like, to be honest, that means you've hit everything really perfect. Okay, because that means there's very little squeeze added from your arms. You're just anchoring on the armpit and you're just walking around, and everything's about the angle and placement of that shoulder and bicep in relation to the neck. So that kind of is, you've done everything perfect if you're hitting that one. So no, it's not that it's not good. The only other difference also is that you can only really hit it from side control with one arm. because it's the transition of my body that creates tension. So from mount or from guard or anything like that, it's going to be tougher to finish. Again, if I am trying to arm triangle someone from guard, to be honest, it is only going to be the figure 4 one I can do then, because it's got that's the only way, because both the gable grip and the arm wrap rely on pressure, gravity, right? So if I'm on my back, kind of cut an angle from full guard and I'm trying to finish, I'm going to have to try and finish with the figure 4 because the other grips won't work at that point, right? So you play around a couple of those grips. From there, again, same positions, mount, dismounting, trying to keep your partner away, walking angle. From there, just playing with the different grips and see what you feel. All right, 1, 2. I'm trying to close this space off and shut off this side of the neck with the shoulder. One of the ways you can do that is your palm to palm, try to force it away. It slightly turns himself away as well as moving me away a little bit to create that space. So for instance, I'm trying to keep the space here, he goes palm to palm, exactly. This is exactly what we want. Although what he should do is he should have his right elbow in the mat, right? Because look, if I try and push into this, pull your right elbow to your side. This is one of the common mistakes with this. You can just collapse that. But if he puts the elbow in the mat now, he's made a structure. It's very strong. It can take all my body weight that way. Unless I'm like 160 kilos and his wrist's splinter. But as long as he's doing this correctly, boom, there, it doesn't matter how much pressure I put that way, I'm not collapsing this back to his neck. And you see all the space, right? So it's very strong that way. One way it's not strong is this way. Right? So it's very strong pushing into him that way, or it should be very strong pushing into him that way. But I'm going to take it up the mat from here. Okay? And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this arm, I'm going to flip it down the back, put the fingers on top of his rib cage, and then I spoon in. Oh God. Okay? So this is a reverse arm triangle. Yeah, it's really horrific. You can do it from mount or from side control.
Is that ninja trick?
No, it's a reverse arm triangle.
Oh,
so I've got this grip from here, he's created space, so yeah, drive your arm away, boom, from here, okay? So this is ideal. This shoulder's off the mat. I want this shoulder off the mat. From here, I'm just going to push up the mat, okay? This is quite important as well because I'll get a better lock. If I try and link it here, this is quite difficult with my shoulder mobility. Maybe if you're really rubbery it won't. But if I push up the mat, that also collapses this. Then, boom, I push it through here. I grab on the inside of my forearm. I flick the fingers on top of his ribs. Then I sit into spoon and I try and roll over my elbow and touch my tricep to the floor. You generally don't need to get the tricep to the floor to get the tap. This, yeah. So this, if you think about the regular figure 4, this is just flipped. And then this hand wants to come up onto his ribs. Once you get this, and then I drop in with my body weight, there's no squeeze, so you can't burn your arms out on this. Okay, which is purely mechanical at that point, and it creates a lot of pressure on your partner. You can do this from mount or from side control. I generally show from side control because it makes sure you're moving your chest up the mat the most, but you can do it from both. One of the things that your partner can do when I drive up, boom, is if as I sit in, he tries to lift his hips to alleviate pressure, right? You then throw this leg over and you stretch him away, all right? Which obviously if you mount, that leg's already there. But that's one of the other things you can do if he tries to alleviate weight by pressure on his neck by lifting his hips. So, a quick go at the reverse arm triangle.
1, 2.